The station's marketplace hummed with the usual chaos of 1,000 species bartering, arguing, and conducting business across the metal expanse of Gateway 7. Lyra Dane moved through the crowd with practiced ease, her worn jacket and scarred hands marking her as just another drifter passing through. No one gave her a second glance. To the Galactic Council's citizens, humans were still newcomers, barely a century into their introduction to the greater universe. Unremarkable, forgettable, she preferred it that way. Lyra paused at a food stall, exchanging credits for a nutrient packet that promised to taste like actual Earth chicken. The Trilaxian vendor barely acknowledged her, its 3 eyes already scanning for the next customer. Around her, the powerful moved with entourages, the Cathari war princes with their glowing armor, the Vexil diplomats with their neural crowns, the mighty, the influential, the ranked, and then she heard it. A sound that made her blood run cold. The high-pitched cry of a child in distress. Lyra's head snapped toward the source. Through the crowd, she spotted a small figure backed against a cargo container. A Sarkith cub, no more than 4 cycles old by the look of it. The species was legendary. Apex predators whose adults stood 8 feet tall with reflexes that could track plasma bolts mid-flight. But this one was just a child. Its silver fur matted with fear. Its vertical pupils dilated wide. 3 Korthan slavers circled it, neural prods crackling in their clawed hands. The station guards were nowhere to be seen. Of course they weren't. The Korthans paid well for strategic blindness. Lyra's jaw tightened. She dropped her food packet and started walking. "Back away from the cub," she said, her voice cutting through the marketplace noise. The lead Korthan turned, its segmented face twisting into what might have been amusement. "Human, this doesn't concern you. Walk away while you still have legs. That's your final warning," Lyra said quietly. "Step back." The slaver laughed, a chittering sound that made nearby merchants look away uncomfortably. "Do you know who I am? I am Krath. Bonded to the Korthan Trade Consortium, we have treaties with 17 council worlds. And you are nothing." Lyra reached the cub, placing herself between it and the slavers. Up close, she could see the child trembling. One small paw clutching a torn piece of fabric that might have been a parent's clothing. Her heart ached, but her face remained stone. "Last chance," she said. Krath raised his neural prod. "Then die with..." He never finished the sentence. Lyra moved with the terrifying efficiency of someone who had trained in Earth's most brutal combat zones and survived engagements across 15 systems. Her hand shot out, catching the prod and redirecting it into Krath's thorax. Electricity arced through his carapace. Before he hit the ground, she had disarmed the second slaver with a strike that shattered his wrist joint and sent him sprawling. The third slaver was smarter. He raised his hands and backed away slowly, then turned and ran. The marketplace had gone silent. Hundreds of beings stared at the human who had just dismantled 3 Korthan slavers in under 4 seconds. Lyra knelt beside the cub, her movements slow and unthreatening. "Hey there," she said softly. "Are you hurt?" The Sarkith child looked up at her with those enormous golden eyes. Pupils still wide with fear, but something else flickering there too. Recognition, perhaps. Or hope. They took my mother," the cub whispered in broken galactic common. "Said she was livestock. Said I was too." Rage, cold and controlled, flooded through Lyra's veins. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Corin." "Okay, Corin. I'm Lyra. And I promise you, we're going to find your mother." Before she could say more, the crowd parted. A detachment of station security arrived, led by a Cathari officer whose bioluminescent patterns flickered with uncertainty. Behind them came something that made even the security detail stand straighter. A Sarkith matriarch. 9 feet of corded muscle and predatory grace. Her silver fur marked with the scars of 100 hunts. Battle leader Thrin. If Lyra remembered the intelligence briefings correctly, one of the most decorated warriors in council space. The matriarch's eyes locked onto Corin, and a sound between a growl and a sob escaped her throat. "My son." Corin tried to run to her, but his legs gave out. Lyra caught him, lifting the cub gently, and carrying him to his mother. Thryn took her child with shaking hands, checking him for injuries with desperate precision. They said they would sell him to the fighting pits, Thryn said, her voice rough, with barely contained violence. I was in a diplomatic meeting. They timed it deliberately, knowing I couldn't leave without causing an incident. Her eyes met Lyra's. You saved him. A human. I didn't even know your kind served. Served? Lyra asked, confused. The Cathari officer stepped forward, his patterns now showing unmistakable deference. Forgive me, Guardian. We didn't recognize you. The protocol violation is mine, Guardian. The word rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. Lyra sighed. So much for staying anonymous. The title of Guardian was the Council's highest individual honor, granted to those who had performed acts of extraordinary valor in defense of multiple species. There were only 73 Guardians across the entire galaxy. Lyra Dane had earned her rank during the Scorpio campaign, when she'd held a breach point alone for 18 hours against a Ravager swarm, saving 40,000 refugees of 12 different species. She'd retired afterward, declining every offer of command, every ceremony. She just wanted to fade into the background. I'm nobody special, Lyra said quietly. Can I be yours now? The small voice stopped her. Corrin was looking up at her from his mother's arms, his golden eyes bright with something that transcended fear or gratitude. It was the look of a child who had found exactly what they'd been searching for, without knowing they were searching at all. Corrin, what? Thryn began. In the old ways, Corrin said, his words gaining strength. When a warrior saves a cub's life, the cub may choose to bond, to become pack. He looked at Lyra with absolute certainty. You fought for me. You didn't have to. You're not even my species. But you stood between me and the dark. Lyra's breath caught. She looked at Thryn, who was staring at her son with shock. Battle leader, the Cathari officer said carefully. This is unprecedented. Across species, bonding with a human is my son's choice to make, Thryn said firmly. Then, to Lyra. Guardian Dane. My people are predators. We value strength, honor, and courage above all else. My son sees in you what took me years of military service to recognize in others. She placed a massive paw over her heart. If you accept, the Sarkith clans will acknowledge the bond. Corrin will be under your protection, and you under ours. Lyra looked down at the small cub, still clutching his torn fabric, still bearing the trauma of his ordeal but facing her with brave hope. She thought about walking away, maintaining her anonymity, her peaceful anonymity. Then, she thought about all the children across the galaxy who needed someone to stand between them and the dark. She knelt, meeting Corrin's eyes at his level. I'm not great at this stuff, kid. I'm rough around the edges, and I don't stay in one place long. Then I'll travel with you, Corrin said immediately. And I'll learn to be brave like you. Lyra felt something in her chest crack open, some wall she'd built after too many battles and too many losses. She reached out, and Corrin took her hand with his small paw. Yeah, she said softly. You can be mine, and I'll be yours. The marketplace erupted in a dozen different species versions of approval, but Lyra only saw Corrin smile, and the way Thryn's eyes glistened with grateful tears, and the small paw that gripped her hand with absolute trust. Later, as station security dealt with the slavers and the diplomatic incident their presence had caused, Lyra sat with Corrin in a quiet corner. The cub was already chattering about all the things he wanted to learn, his trauma beginning to process now that he was safe. Lyra? He asked suddenly. Why did you help me? Everyone else just watched. She was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. Because someone has to. Because the universe is big and scary and full of bad things, but it's also full of good people who will stand up when it matters. I'm nothing special, Corrin. I'm just someone who decided that somebody should do something starts with me. Corrin nodded solemnly, processing this wisdom. Then he leaned against her side, exhausted from his ordeal. I'm glad you're mine now. Me too, kid, Lyra said, surprised to find she meant it. Me too. Above them, the station's viewport showed the infinite stars, and somewhere out there, the galaxy continued its